Hello and welcome to New Mexican Tinsmith. I'm Jason Eunice E. Delgado, and today we're going to look at creating a cross. It's a favorite of mine, and what we're going to be doing is applying the tin to a wooden cross. We'll see how that's put together. Now the plans for this will be available on www.newmexicotinwork.com, but obviously you can scale this basic idea to any size cross you'd like to use. So let's look at the components we're going to be using today. What I have here is a wooden cross that I've prepared, and then a couple of strips of tin, in this case just inside the size of the cross, which will lay across in this fashion. Next, you'll want to make a centerpiece of some kind. Now, one of the options here is that you can do little sections that go around the cross in this area here. And if you're going to do that, you're going to want to create tabs on the sides that you can fold and then use those to attach to the cross itself. But today what I'd like to look at is just doing a centerpiece right on the center section of the cross. Now, finally, to attach those pieces to the cross, we're going to use upholstery nails. And they happen to come in a plain silver variety that matches the look of our tin. You can see I've got a little kit here where I keep all kinds of small bits that I regularly use for my tin work. And this is a handy little thing to keep not only for efficiency, but also as a nice cool down after your work if you want to go ahead and knock out some little tabs for mirrors, or in this case a small hanger. And then that way the little pieces are ready for you when you're ready to move on to your larger projects. So in this case we're going to use a few of these upholstery tacks to actually attach the tin to the cross. Now, let's begin by working our tin pieces. Obviously, you're open to a variety of choices here, but I personally prefer a very simple look to crosses. So what I'm going to demonstrate today is what's called scoring. I'm just going to put in a few simple lines to crease the tin. It helps it hold flat to the cross along its length, but it also gives just enough detail without getting busy. So to prepare to score the tin, I'm going to just eyeball the center of this piece. And just for reference, this piece of tin is 5/8 wide and 8 inches long, and this one should be just about, let's see, we've got 12 there, 14 inches long. Okay, so to do the scoring, we want to actually put a little bit of extra padding underneath our piece. This allows the tin to form. I'm going to place this straight edge along the length of our tin, and I'm going to use this tool. This tool is used by silversmiths to rub out imperfections in this fashion, but we're actually going to turn this over and use this point to do the scoring. So we have our first scored line. This is from the back. What we've done is created a slight V section in this tin, and that will help keep this straight across its length. I'm then going to go to the ends, and I'm going to score in a little triangular section on each end to kind of finish out the look of the design. This ruler is unusual in that it's got some material here to keep it from moving around, and it also has a steel insert here. The steel insert helps support the tool as I'm doing the scoring. Crosses were always one of my grandmother, Angelina Martinez Delgado's favorites, and so I always feel like I'm returning to home when I'm doing crosses. I'm just going to find center here, which is right at 4 inches. And then we've completed the scoring on this piece. I'm going to move on to the next one. So I'm going to set this one aside for just a moment and score the next section. Now this I'll have to do in a couple scores because of the length of it. You can see I'm putting quite a bit of weight into it. You don't necessarily have to put that much weight into it, but obviously the more forming you actually do with the tin, the better look you get. So you can do with a simple scored line. If you have difficulty getting a nice deep score, what I recommend is trying to put together a tool where you can actually lean into it, where maybe you've got a wooden handle. That's exactly the kind of tool that my grandmother had when she was teaching me. And the wooden handle will actually extend over your arm like this, but instead of this hammer end, it would have the nice scoring point, and she could pull it across her work like this, and thereby use her arms to help get a little extra pressure there. Finally, if you can't find something like that, you can always score the front side of the piece. It's much easier to see the scored line on the direction you're scoring. So if you're having difficulty seeing your scored line, just use the front side, and that'll show your detail. Okay, and that completes the scoring of that piece. Now what we're going to do is measure in 4 inches, which would be equivalent to half the section of the arms of the cross, so that the top is even with the arms. I'm going to mark that point. And then I'm going to take a sharp nail set here, and I'm going to punch through the tin. Then I'm going to go to the ends where we created those triangular segments and punch through there as well. Now these will be the holes where our upholstery tacks will go through. The upholstery tacks aren't very strong, so what you don't want to try to do is punch through the tin with the upholstery tacks. Okay, so what you should have is one segment with our scored line. We have punched holes through here on either end and in center, and then on our arm in the same locations. And now we're going to do our centerpiece. Now in the centerpiece, we want to score a line that we can create a rosette pattern around. Once I have that in place, I'm going to flip this over on the back side and apply my edging. Now, at one time we've talked about the edging was specific to each family of northern New Mexico tinsmiths. They each had their own style or design, so you could actually look at the edging and tell what family of tinsmiths created that particular piece. The edging I'm going to use was one that was used by my great-great-grandfather Francisco Delgado. It's a half-round kind of scallop shape. We'll be stamping it from the back, and then you can see the scallops from the front. Now this particular edging, he actually reserved for special gifts, like wedding gifts within the family. But my grandmother loved this edging so much that when she was finally allowed to do tin work, she used it all the time on her work. And since she taught me most of what I know about design, I just continue her new standard. Okay. Once you've completed the edging, you should have a design that goes all the way around the circumference of your circle here. Usually you don't want the edging to get busy, so try to keep the design simple, whatever that may be. It can be just dots, it could be perpendicular lines going in almost like a pie edge, and you can even do those lines back and forth. You can do circles. Anything that's kind of a simple repeated pattern, but try to think of it as more of a framework around your actual stamp work rather than an integral piece of the design. It looks nicer if you keep it kind of light and simple. So now we're going to go ahead and apply our rosette. I'm going to take a half round stamp here. You can see we've got kind of a U shape here. And what I'm going to do is place it right on that circle that I scored earlier. Now, each time I place this stamp down, what I'm actually doing is taking the first little indentation here and placing it right in the last indentation of my stamp. So that's going to get me locked into step, and then I'll place it straight up and down and strike with the hammer. You always want to try for one solid strike as opposed to tapping at it like that. If you tap at it, there's a chance each time you strike that the stamp can move without you perceiving it, and that's going to leave what's called a ghosted image. Won't be quite as clean. So there's the half rounds around our rosette. I'm going to flip this piece over now. You can see we've got some shaping here in the metal, and I'm going to just take some of that out by using my large flat ball peen hammer and tapping straight down just where we applied the stamp work. You don't want to strike in these flat areas of the tin because you can actually mar it. All right, and there's the piece from the front. You can see we have our edging and we have the outside of our rosette design. Now I'm going to take a long straight punch and do the sides of our rosette. This tool here, you can see these markings at a diagonal. This was actually one of my great-grandfather's original tools here. So what I'm going to do is place the tool again in this indentation that's left by these designs and point the tool right towards center, which I'm going to go ahead and mark with my pen to make it clear. Remember, at the end, we're going to use very, very fine steel wool to go over this bright finish and kind of give it a satin look. And so that will remove any kind of marker or pen. I always tell my students, feel free to write whatever notes you feel necessary to keep track of where you're going with the design. You can always erase the pen, you can't erase your stamp work. So, for example, if you felt more comfortable to keep track of what you're doing, to actually draw in and give yourself an indication of where you were going to go with this design, then do whatever notes you feel necessary. On larger pieces where I'm doing bending with the bending break and working both sides of the piece, in order to keep track, I'll write notes like just simply front, just to know that this is the front of the piece that I'm working here. Once you get into more complex pieces, you can lose track of where you're at because you can get so into just the creation of the stamp design. Now you'll notice as I went to go create the sides of our scallops here that I actually skipped every other one. And that's because I'm using my eye to guide this punch to center. And by skipping every other one, it's much easier to do that. You have much more control over where it's going without your eye being pulled by a series of lines being stacked one on top of the other. Also, it leaves it very simple to complete it because all you have to do is split what's left on center. Okay, that completes it from the front. We flip it over and back. Again, there's some shaping, so I'm going to take that out. Now, at this point, we have a choice. We could either use the same punch we just did to do the centers from the back, and this will kind of raise the design out, or we could take some more padding, put it under here, and use our small ball peen in the rounded section to hammer the inside of these sections out, and that's called repoussé. So I'm going to demonstrate the repoussé today. Now, what you don't want to do with repoussé is just try to smooth it out and bowl it like you're going for a perfect bowl. You actually want it to be rough and hammered. It's part of the artistic part of it that it looks hammer formed and natural. Okay, and there we have our repoussé applied. You can see again we have some shaping here, so we're going to take that out by hand. I'm just going to press down, and if you press right about middle of this design and right on where the stamps were, that usually does the best job of taking out the extra shaping without taking away from your design. Okay, and there we have it. So, as an embellishment, I'm going to take a nail set, which is just a circle here. I'm going to work around the edge of our rosette. Okay. And then as a final piece, I'm going to take a small rosette punch and apply that right on center. Now on the larger punches that have quite a bit of area, what you're going to want to do is do an initial strike to kind of set it in place, and then actually tilt it and work it around the design so you get a nice clean indentation. All right. Then we will finally take a nail set here we go, and punch a hole through on center. Again, this is to leave a place for our upholstery nail to go through and attach this to the wood. So we have our completed pieces, we have our centerpiece, we have the length of our cross and the arm of our cross, like that. And let's go ahead and apply that to the wood. So what I'm doing is just getting everything lined up. I'm taking a look along the length of this and making sure that it follows the cross behind it. And then I'll apply the centerpiece right on top and line that up on center. And now I'm going to use a bit of a trick. Because the upholstery nails don't have a lot of length, you really can't get in there with your fingers and hold all of this together. So what I'm going to do is take some needle nose pliers, and I'm going to hold the upholstery nail with just the tip of the pliers here, like so, okay? And I'll begin tapping this nail in this way. So that'll get it started into the wood. Once it's started, then I can remove that and finish tapping it in. You want to be very careful about tapping these in. It's real easy for them to want to fold over to one side, so it's important that you support it as it's going in there. And let's go ahead and do the ends. Now, obviously, they have rounded tops, so you want to be very, very careful about striking these straight up and down and right on center, right over the pointed section. My grandmother's shop was always covered up in crosses, so it always takes me back to complete a cross. And then graduating from St. Michael's High School in Santa Fe, I always think it's appropriate to honor my alma mater. Okay, and there we have the finished cross. Now, what we're going to do is take some steel wool and just clean this up a bit, give it a satin finish. And there we have it. So it cleans up all the ink and leaves us with a nice satin finish. Now, these basic techniques that we've used, we obviously used it to create a cross today, but you can take this same idea and use it to apply any kind of tin panel to any kind of wood product. So chairs, cabinet doors, spaces above an entry, anything like that, you can use these upholstery tacks to apply your tin panel with. So I'd also like to show you some other finished pieces so you can kind of see some of the variety. Here's another cross. Remember we talked about the repoussé. So here's another cross that was done with the stamped Rosette. And you can see some little carved out sections in the wood here. And here is one on just a smaller scale. Now we talk about how do we hang these crosses. One way is to attach a metal hanger right at the top and use a nail to hold that onto the cross. And another way is to actually use a router and cut a little keyhole. I hope you enjoyed the completion of our Spanish colonial cross today. I'm Jason Unice Delgado, and thank you for watching New Mexican Tinsmith. I'll catch you next time.